ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணலாங்க சார். வந்துட்டாங்க சார், நம்ம ஆரம்பிச்சிடலாங்க சார். ஓகே சார். பிரபு
சார் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணிடலாம் சார். ரெக்கார்ட்
பண்ணிடலாங்களா? ஓகே. யா சார். யா சுரேஷ் பாபு சார். சார் சுரேஷ் பாபு சார். சார் சுரேஷ் பாபு சார் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணலாங்களா சார்?
எஸ் சார், எஸ் சார்.
Yes sir, yes sir. Yeah. So good morning to Dr. Antony Palackal sir and all the participants who gave a continuous support to webinar series 1 on insights into sociological thoughts. I thank Honorable Vice Chancellor of Bharathiar University, Dr. Kaliraj, and the respected registrar, Dr. Murugan, for this for permitting us to conduct this webinar series. And I think this week is a great week for Department of Sociology and Population Studies, Bharathiar University, and all the participants, because we are really fortunate to have eminent faculties from reputed institutes were with us, like Dr. Ratish Kumar from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Dr. Nagaraj Kundamedu from Hyderabad University, Dr. Saktivel Raju, who gave a wonderful session yesterday. I think he's a commissioner of commercial tax from Northeastern region. Their sessions were well received from the participants around the country. In that line, we are really happy to have Dr. Antony Palackal sir, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Sociology, University of Kerala. Sir, we are really happy and honored to have you today to give a session on the contemporary thinkers, very important thinkers, I should say. Two thinkers Sir is going to focus on today, like Manuel Castells and Giddens. So on behalf of Department of Sociology and Population Studies, Bharathiar University, and on behalf of all the participants, I welcome you, sir, for this webinar series 1. And I welcome Dr. Suresh Babu, sir, Professor, Department of Sociology, Bharathiar University. I welcome Dr. Prabhu, who's technically helping us. And he worked here as a Junior Research Fellow of ICMR project. So I welcome all of you for this last day of webinar series 1. And to inform you all, we have planned webinar series 2 on recent developments of social science research from 22nd to 25th of June. So we once again welcome you all for this webinar. Now I'll hand over the mic to Dr. Suresh Babu sir to introduce the guest as well as the talk. Thank you, sir.
Hello, good morning, sir. Good morning, Dr. Antony Palackal, a professor of sociology in the Department of Sociology, University of Kerala. And I also welcome Dr. Sambat Kumar, professor and head Department of Sociology, Bharathiar University, Coimbatore. Also, I welcome all the participants of various parts of India, and especially the colleagues in and around of all various universities. At the outset, I would like to thank and appreciate my administrative authorities for giving us a chance to run this program. And it's a typical program that I never seen that sociological theories have been delivered in the webinar sites. But it's that with the discussion with Dr. Sambat Kumar, we both together had this kind of thought of idea so that people will get benefit out of this. With this small note, I just wanted to introduce today's resource person, a great sociologist of Kerala and India. Dr. Antony Palackal is a professor and aide in the Department of Sociology, University of Kerala. He has about 25 years of teaching experience in the PG Sociology. He did his post-graduation in Sociology from Delhi School of Economics and obtained a PhD from the University of Kerala for a doctoral dissertation in the area of globalization culture. He was a visiting Indian scholar in Cleveland State University, Ohio, United States of America, and was consultant at the Department of Sociology, University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. Since January 2003, he is the Indian coordinator and principal investigator of the World Science Project that studies the impact of internet on research communication in developing countries. He has conducted researches on the struggles and movements of excluded people in Kerala, with special reference to the issues of land and water, supported by the University Grants Commission and ICSSR. He has published 8 books and more than 40 research articles and several popular articles in leading periodicals in Malayalam. His textbook, that's called Introduction to Kerala Studies, in 2 volumes, is an encyclopedic compendium on Kerala. He is the recipient of ICSR Senior Fellowship in Sociology for the study of land issues and social inclusion in Kerala in 2011. He received Flair Award of Excellence with the 50,000 rupees and a certificate of merit from the Department of Higher Education, Government of Kerala in 2015. He also received Research Excellence Award from the World Science Project, Louisiana State University, USA, for the Best Country Coordinator of the project in 2014. In June 2017, he received the Best Research Paper Award in the International Conference on Skills, Engineering and Technology, organized and conducted by ICT Academy, Government of Kerala. Antony Palackal is a former president of Kerala Sociological Society and member, Managing Committee of Indian Sociological Society. Antony Palackal's academic movie on Promised Land and the Broken Promises was selected for the Ethnograph Film Festival in Paris in April 2014. This movie is used as study material for the study and discourses on developmental issues and new social movements in Kerala. He serves as a consultant and trainer to the several NGOs and socio-political movements in Kerala. He offers classes, courses, and seminars on topics of socio-cultural significance. His areas of interest include sociological theories, sociology of science and development, social movements, cultural dynamics, and gender and society. Sir, we are happy to have this kind of excellent biodata which you are having, your academic credential and practice towards the nation building process is amazing. Sir, we have seen your small Sir, we have seen your biodata itself shows that you are a great sociologist for India. And after John Katakayam and P. Nair, and one more important sociologist we want to recall, who is none other than Antony Palackal. I have been hearing your name, sir, for some time. I couldn't see you, but it's good opportunity to have here and to deliberate your views with regard to the important 2 topics. That is, one is Manuel Castells and another one is Antony Giddens. The 2 topics definitely enlighten us, sir. And on behalf of the Department of Sociology and Population Studies, Bharathiar University, Coimbatore, we wholeheartedly welcome you, sir, for excellent webinar series on insight into contemporary sociological thought. Sir, please, sir, and come and share your views. And again, welcome you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Please, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Suresh Babu.
Thank you, sir.
For this long introduction about me, which I did not expect actually. And thank you very much. And in fact, I'm deeply, appreciative of the initiative that the Bharathiar University, under the leadership of Professor Sampath and the colleagues, Dr. Suresh Babu and others, have taken up. And I understand that this has been sort of appreciated and used by several of us in India, several students of sociology. So much so that I was told that, you had the maximum limit of 250, which has gone up to 280, and then you had to stop the registration. So, and I also understand that the series, the lectures that you already had, the 3 days, were very, very effective and fruitful. And today, before I start, let me connect, the share the slide. Just a minute. Okay, is it visible to you, the slide?
Yes, sir. It's visible,
All
sir.
right.
Visible, sir.
Okay, fine. And also, I think I am also rather seeable. you know. Okay, then let me start because we don't have much time.
Yes.
As it was introduced by both Professor Sambath and Dr. Suresh Babu, the two others that we are discussing today are perhaps considered to be one of, the two most important contributors of sociology, in sociology, regarding contemporary society. In understanding the contemporary society, these two others have contributed, so well that they are considered as the most prominent authors, thinkers in sociology today. And this is what I'm thinking of doing today. First, I would give perhaps about half an hour to 40 minutes, talk about Anthony Giddens, not only because, he comes first in terms of the writings, also, but also, Manuel Castells, in fact, takes forward, his ideas of structuration and applies to the contemporary society, particularly in the arena of information society. So we will first talk about Anthony Giddens, Anthony Giddens, as he is known, a British sociologist. Perhaps, for a break, we will break for about 10 minutes for any to discuss for feedbacks or clarifications, etc., if any, and then we'll go to Manuel Castells. Okay. So, Anthony Giddens, a British sociologist, he is kind of prolific writer and analyst of the present day world. I have not come across anyone else in sociology particularly who has, dwelled into areas, of all dimensions of contemporary society, from modernity to globalization to, understanding theory, sociology, rules of sociological methods, issues of identity, issues of risk, insecurity, and so on and so forth. So he has touched on almost all aspects of the contemporary society today. And no wonder that he has authored more than 34 books, which means average of 2 books every year. 34 books. Is the co-founder of Polity Press, a very prestigious international publication, and his books are published in at least 29 languages, they say. So he's really a prolific writer and a great sociologist. His works concerns modernity, globalization, politics, etc., etc. And I know the subtle issues also, like the self and identity, the construction or formation of self in this globalized world, and so on and so forth. And he served as Professor Emeritus at the London School of Economics, and he's now we are going to discuss his very popular, in the sense, he has been known for this theory of structuration. And I know that in almost all universities in India and abroad, discusses this theory in the classrooms, particularly in the PG and PhD and so on. Theory of structuration, which is an analysis of agency and structure where primacy is granted to neither either agency or structure. However, politically, Giddens advocated, a third way, not the right, not the left, but a third way, a kind of middle way between capitalism and socialism. So he is known for his left of center approach. It's like not really inclined to left, but a kind of middle position, a centric position, which is not Marxist. He advocated the concept of social democracy. Social democracy. He was very close to the British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and was an advisor to him for political issues. And in fact, he was instrumental in formulating their political ideology and so on. So a very powerful person at that level. But he had also concerns for social justice, social inclusion, active civil society, etc., etc. So he was also a man, actively politically oriented, not an activist as such, but in terms of, giving ideas, approaches, perspectives, and so on. Now coming to theory of structuration, he presents this theory primarily in his book, The Constitution of Society. How society is constituted, from the very title of the book in 1984, and develops this theory of structuration, wherein he tries to integrate the two dimensions which are set in two poles in the sociological analysis. The two dimensions of social reality, that is action and structure. Action by human agents and social structure that exists external to the actors, the subjects of action. So which is external to the human beings. So how to combine, how to synthesize these two dimensions, these two poles of the spectrum, of the domain of social reality, of sociological analysis, he was trying to combine, which was, a kind of perennial issue in sociology. I'll come to that when I try to explain the dualism. So the primary question, the main question that he asked was whether it is individuals or social forces that shape our social reality. Whether individuals or social forces, or an interface of the two, an interaction between the two, individuals as well as social forces, which he called later structure. So the connection between structure and action is a fundamental element of Giddens' social theory. The connection between the bipolar elements, structure and action, the kind of binary that was posed in sociology, in modern sociology from its very beginning. And so he used the notion structuration, the connection between structure and action, how the structuration process, in other words, how the constitution of society, the constitution of the present day reality, social reality, is being formed and reformed, or produced and reproduced. Now, we need to understand this theory of structuration in the context of the issue of dualism in sociology. It's actually a Western philosophical issue, which sociologists have taken up, but in mostly, from a lopsided or one-sided point of view, that they have either emphasized one or the other. They have emphasized either action or actors, or the structures or orders, etc. So the dualism in sociology, a perennial issue. What is that issue, the dualism, really mean? Now, it actually the underpinning of this theory, this dualism, is an ontological issue, a philosophical issue. How the subject and object are related. The relation between the subject and object of social reality. You know, the two basic components of a social reality. For social reality is constituted by these two basic components, namely subject and object. Subject, of course, is the world of the actor, the subject, one who is acting. The object is, you know, the world that is seen, that exists outside of the subjects, which we call as the objective world, the objective reality. The easy notion perhaps is to connect with the idea of social facts by Durkheim, you know, the objective reality, the world of the external, the general, and constraining reality, constraining structures of world outside. That is the objective world. Subjective world is where, you know, pertaining to the actor, the individual, the person, you know, which we call as agents, one who is capable of acting, you know, who has the acting capacity. Giddens will later say that these actors have the capacity also to self-reflect, his reflective sociology, reflexive sociology, you know, that the capacity to look into oneself as an outsider, the me aspect of individuals, not the ego, the I aspect, the biological aspect, Herbert Mead says, you know, the division between the I and the me, the biological and the sociological. So the subject here is mostly concerned about the sociological I, the subject, one who acts, and object is the reality that is existing outside, that man has created, you know, in order to meet his or her various needs. So the division between the subject and object, and its dimensions include the world internal to the actor, the world external to the actor. In other words, we have, you know, our more popular concept of micro and macro aspects of reality. The individual, as I mentioned, or person, and on the other side we have society or community or groups or collectivity, the actor, and then we have the agency, the human agency, who can act, who is empowered to act, you know, who consciously act. And then we have the structures that are built outside of the actors. And when it comes to the subject, you know, the focus is on the meanings, the values, the motives of the actors that Weber talks about. You know, on the other side, we have the cause effect, you know, establishing this causal chain, but that other, you know, those who emphasized the causal, the structural dimension, like Marx or Durkheim, or even, I mean, to begin with Comte and so on, the positivistic understanding of society, you know, the causal chain. So this is viewed as a dualistic notion of society, and our thinkers, you know, from the classical period onwards, to begin with Durkheim, Weber, or Marx, I mean, let's say Comte or Spencer, and then Marx, Weber, or Durkheim, and later, you know, have taken a position or starting point of analysis either of these dualistic components, either subjective or the objective. Either they, you know, they began with actor or structures. Now, Giddens precisely addresses this issue of dualism, and then he says that it is not actually the dualism that we need to you know, start with. Instead, we need to, you know, it is to be understood as a duality. Duality means two dimensions of a single reality, two aspects, like the two sides of a coin. These are two aspects that are integral, that are inseparable, and so we need to take them together holistically. Structure and action are two sides of the same coin. Neither structure nor action can exist independently. That is very important. Neither structure nor action can exist independently. They are intimately related, and so the reality is constituted, or society is constituted as a result of the duality of structures. Duality of structures that are consisting of or comprised of both these, integral aspect of social reality, namely structure and action. In other words, human agency and social structure. Structures make social action possible. Social action is the action of the actors, in the Weberian sense. Structures make social action possible, and in turn, social action create those very structures. So it's a reciprocal relationship. It is a reciprocal relationship. Structures may constrain as well as empower the actors to act and interact, and thereby produce structures. So there is duality of structures. So they cannot be set apart. I have already told you. The line of causality. So it's a question of cause-effect relationship. So the causality is reciprocal. It is mutual. It is mutually implicating. Therefore, there is no emphasis on one aspect or the other. The domain of the study of social science is therefore neither the experience of the individual nor the existence of any form of societal reality, the objective structures. It is, in fact, the social practices ordered across space and time. And he also emphasizes these aspects of components of space and time, which several of our sociologists have ignored. And he, brings in that elements and stresses the need for being located in space and time. So social practices are resulted out of this interaction between social actors in a structural domain. We will see what does he mean by the structure soon. Now there are two other positions, that the positions in understanding society and social action, etc., namely positions of action and position of praxis. Action means, in the Weberian sense, the subjective meaning of the actor in an action. So our micro sociologists, or those who emphasized the aspect of subjective meanings, the actors, that is the social action. Our easy way to understand is to understand social action by Weber. Then we have the praxis. Interestingly, incidentally, Dr. Suresh Babu, who used the term praxis, in talking about my sociological engagements. It's actually the way of doing, the how of doing actions, whereas action just means the why question, that actors are supposed to address, the meaning of an individual in undertaking a particular action or interaction. So that is action. Whereas praxis is, the way it is conducted, the way it is accomplished, the how of it, which, our thinkers like Goffman or Garfinkel in ethnomethodology, Goffman in dramaturgy, etc., they address this question of praxis, emphasizing the enactment, the conduct, the performance, the production of social action that is pertaining to the structural component. So social action as enacted conduct is praxis. Just as an individual's autonomy is influenced by structure, structures are maintained and adapted through the exercise of agency. So in both ways, that there is interface, there is mutual implication. Now, if we look at more closely to our some of our theories, our main fundamental theories like functionalism or even conflict, ethnomethodology, structuralism, etc., structuralism of the Levi-Straussian, we find reflections of these theories in his the synthesis or in coinage of structuration theory. That he is trying to bring in all elements, because you need to synthesize these two dualistic components, namely the action and structure. So in fact, he is trying to connect these theories, or in opposing, that are which have starting point in a dualistic purview, dualistic domain. So therefore, he would say that the unit of analysis is neither the actor nor the structure, but the duality. It's duality of structure. Therefore, the duality of structure results in actions, practices. He calls it practices, our behavior, our activities. So the duality of structure should constitute the principal unit of action, unit of our investigation and analysis, wherein we look at both these components, agency as well as structure. And so the conditions of the enactment of action in a praxis mode. Now he talks about how this is made possible. The enactment is made possible in the duality of structure. In the constitution of society. In the process of structuration, structuring the behavior, the practices of a community. And there, these two elements, rules and resources, are most important. You know that. I think Giddens is after all, is a familiar thinker, I think. So the two rules, two components or two properties of this structure, two inextricable properties of structure are rules and resources. That actors, have to make use of these properties in order to engage, in a social environment, and then, in order to come up with practices. For his practice, he or she has to have these properties, namely rules and resources. Is it okay? Can I go ahead? Any feedback? Is it fine?
Sir, going well, sir. Going well.
All right. Okay. So these rules and resources. Rules are primarily, what he means, the structure. When he talks about structure, it is not the structure that Marx has in mind or Durkheim has in mind. That's namely the social fact, or the economic structure or ideological structures, the base and superstructure. It is rather an internal reality. Rather an internal reality in the sense, the rules are like our laws or customs or norms or values, etc. That every member of a community, every member of a society have assimilated, and that comes into action, when he engages in an interaction, when he wants to practice, make a practice and be functional in a society. So these are the rules. Rules and act as both medium and outcome. So they are both a medium of their practice, medium of their enactment, as well as, by their mere enactment of these, with the help of these rules, they also create, perhaps, or recreate or reproduce these structures, and thereby they sustain, maintain, and reproduce. So the process of reproduction. So in that sense, it is both means as well as ends, the rules and resources. More than resources, rules are the normative structure. Normative structure which are assimilated, which are absorbed through socialization, of course, of a community, socialization of individuals. They have assimilated this. They know what is, appropriate in a given context, in an educational institution, in a classroom, on the roads, when you drive vehicles, whatever. For that matter, a simple simile is like metaphor, is the rules of the game of football. The players know very well what are the rules. Otherwise, and they have to follow the rules. Otherwise, they they will be, booked, they will be taken to task. So these are the structures. In that sense, these rules are the mental structures in which the anthropologist, the Levi-Straussian, understanding of structure, the mental structures which are built inside, internal to the actors. It is not, we shall not misunderstand it as the external structure. External structures are routinized, routinized and institutionalized, etc., through the enactment of these rules, in a given context, in a given environment. So they can act and interact only with the medium of these rules. They can constrain, like the social facts, the rules of the social facts. Social facts constrain us. That, for example, we cannot marry. Normally, the caste endogamy, the rule of caste endogamy, doesn't permit a person to marry from outside of one's caste. That is constraining. If we need to belong to that social fact, that social, for example, caste system in India, we need to follow that rule. Otherwise, we have to pay the, the brunt, the price for that. So in the same way, these rules, in a way, constrain as well as enable that we can act because of the strength of these rules. In certain occasions, in very many occasions, these rules will help us. That, okay, I have followed the rules, then what's the problem? We can ask them. So rules are both constraining as well as enabling. Rules are both medium and outcome, in the sense that practices come out of the enactment of these rules. So that way, rules are very important in the process of structuration, in the process of this, in the enactment of this duality of structures. They are the general procedures or techniques, various rules of social living, like bureaucratic rules, rules of games, etc. Everywhere we have this normative structure, which we call normative structure. The norms, the values, the injunctions, the do's and don'ts, all belong to the domain of rules. It's part of the stock of knowledge, the storehouse. In other words, the grammar of action. It is with the grammar that we conduct a kind of action, or for that matter, language. In language, we have a grammar. Unless we follow that grammar, we don't follow the rules of that language, whatever be the language. So in the language, there is a code, that the grammar. And then the enactment of that language is our speech. The speech can have different expressions, but all of us are entitled to follow the grammar, the code of that language. In the same manner, we have certain very basic rules to be followed in a given context, in a given situation, environment, and we are supposed to follow that. And we know that through socialization, as individuals grown up in a particular community and culture, we know what are the basic rules appropriate to a particular situation. So it's like memory traces. Perhaps the Bourdieu perhaps called this as habitus. The habitus that Bourdieu talks about, lodged in the heads. At the appropriate time, it comes automatically. Otherwise, consciously we can deviate, we can violate these rules. But then, as I said, we have to have we have to pay the price. We have control measures, and the penal measures and so on. So rules are there inside the human agents, inside every individual, in a community, in a culture, and they are like mutually shared knowledge, the shared stock of knowledge, as well as sometimes discursive consciousness, in the sense that we individuals sometimes ask themselves about and interpret these rules, and then act. In very many cases, that also happens. There are two ways of operationalizing these rules. In terms of the practical consciousness, that comes automatically, mechanically, spontaneously, in a normal situation. Sometimes in certain extraordinary in extraordinary situation, we have to engage in a discussion. We have to reflect about those rules. I think I need to go a bit faster. So then we have the resources. Resources are like our status. our positions. Everyone has a position, a status in a given social structure. So that gives us some authority, as the head of the department. We have certain authority as the father of the house, certain authority as the husband. So status and positions, and then we have certain paraphernalia required, like the organizational, structures, the necessary goods and commodities that are required in an interaction context. So we have both rules and resources as structural elements, structural properties in the enactment of our practices, actions, as human agencies. And thereby, so these structures institutionalize. Because through the enactment of these already, known, assimilated, integrated, socialized rules, we are producing and reproducing the social reality. So we routinize the system. Systems are created, generated out of these practices, and routinize and regionalize, in space by positioning actors and their presentation. And these are essential for the sustenance. And he also brings in the concept of locale. Locale means the element of physical space. And that physical space gives us the contextual knowledge, appropriate to a particular environment, a physical context. And in the locale, actors establish their presence with respect to each other. That, particularly in face-to-face interaction and having the practical knowledge, etc. So, but it can vary in different degree, depending upon the nature of this locale, the public sphere. I think it is here that Manuel Castells take forward, that he talks mostly of the physical space, whereas Manuel Castells talks about virtual space, which we will see there, and the formation of the structures there. So locales also vary with regard to the exposure that actors can disclose or enclose. We have our ways of, dramaturgy. You remember Goffman's dramaturgy, that we take different, what do we call, defensive mechanisms, to present ourselves well, so we can disclose or enclose ourself, in the interaction. Personalities and people vary, in terms of their presentation. So structures, I told you, they are not external as far as guidance is concerned. They are internal. They are mostly this domain of rules. And in that sense, we have his understanding of structure has more similarity to, the idea of structure, that is the mental code, the mental structure by Levi-Strauss. So then here is an example. I told you already about that example, the question of language. Language has the basic grammar, that is the rules, the grammar, and then we have the expressions, the practices, that is our speech, our conversation. So conversation and its tone and what he calls, Levi-Strauss calls it as parole, can vary, can take different forms of expression, but the grammar remains the same, with regard to a particular language. So in the same fashion, structures may have its discursive consciousness in different contexts, but the basic element of that structure, the rules, the procedures, the values, the norms, shall not vary. I'm not going. I suppose you understand. If you need further examples, I can tell you, give you. But then I need to now move ahead. So we can transform the structures. So in this process, of production and reproduction, sometimes these rules can be transformed. We modify. For example, in this pandemic period, COVID-19 period, even this the very our act of webinar is a kind of a transformed form of learning instead of the classroom learning. And we have certain ethics and codes developed in engaging this webinar seminar series. Otherwise, you would have contacted the Bharathiar University now would have perhaps organized a seminar, a face-to-face seminar, in the university itself. Instead, now we have reproduced it, but with a slightly changed mode of interaction. And it's like distance interaction through perhaps Castell's word, forming a network, we are engaging in an interaction through by constituting a network of certain individuals and certain points of networks, the nodes of networks. So the structures can be transformed. And so finally, Giddens would say that universe is not a pre-given universe. It is not given, rather it is constituted or constructed. In that sense, like the phenomenologists say, the social reality is constructed, but through certain set or pre-given procedures, with the use of rules. Actors enact, actors perform, actors do things. So by doing rules, like the methodologies say, doing rules, that we construct reality or reconstruct reality. So in that sense, it is not a pre-given as such. So the realm of, therefore, he brings in also the importance of agency, that people can act because they can recreate, they can reproduce, they can transform. So the agency becomes important. So he gives importance both agency as well as structure, and that's how he integrates this, this issue, this very fundamental issue in sociology, namely the relation between action and structure. In other words, ontologically, we call it as the relation between the subject and the object, which, from time immemorial, our authors were, grappling with. Like from Hegel, for example, Hegel emphasized the element of actor, the spirit, the mind, the insight, the subjective realm. Whereas Marx, subverted him or made an inversion of Hegelian position, and then said, no, not the spirit, but matter is important. World is important, not mind is important. So therefore, the task of sociology is to understand this constitution of, or the working of this duality of structures. And so therefore we need to interpret, the actors, interpretative understanding of Weber, the social world, and then analyze it. So I'm going to conclude Giddens, that of course we know that he has tried to synthesize, integrate these two aspects, the issues of macro and micro. At the same time, he has some criticism. Giddens, of course, he has, as I told you, he has delved on very many subjects, very many issues of the present day society. At the same time, now, with regard to this structuration theory, there are certain elements that we need to, like, perhaps we can talk about him critically, in the sense, though he talks about procedures and its reproduction, and now we get an impression that the conversion, the transformation takes very gradually and slowly, and so maybe the reproduction normally happens as status quo, as the establishment, like, the supporting the establishment, as structures and systems are to be maintained, reproduced, and institutionalized. So he does not understand, or the element of conflict there. We have lots of conflicts in society, lots of struggles of the underclass, of the subaltern groups, of the excluded groups, and so maybe, in the process of this production of structures and institutionalization of the structures, the very issue of social inequality perhaps maybe is ignored, in this whole idea of structuration, because he says his focus was on the connection between the two and the production of social structures, the reproduction of social structures, the sustenance of social structures. But he also says that, these structures as rules and procedures may change, but then it's not emphasized enough. So therefore, we will ask, does he mean that the social, how does he explain the social inequality? How does he explain the struggles that are going on? How does he explain the question of the nexus of power elites, the power elites? and their practices, those who are powerful, those who are politically powerful, those who are the capitalists, in terms of their capital, who are powerful. How does he explain that? So does he mean that the same structures will be reproduced and sustained and maintained and so on? So it looks like conflicts and struggles have very little place, in this whole idea of structuration theory. You understand? So I think I'll stop here now, and I'll take if there are any questions or feedback and so on. We spent about 10 minutes, and then we'll go on to castles. Is it okay, Professor Sampath? Hello.
Sir.
Yes.
So you can start with the manual casters, and finally we'll have some question session.
All right. If that's so, I'll go to castles.
Yes.
Then.
Yes.
Let me get the slide. Is it okay? Can you see the slide?
Yes,
sir. Yes, sir. We can, sir. We can see.
Okay, so network society. In fact, as I told you, castles in a way takes forward, this structuration, understanding of the constitution of society, and applies to the most important development, the phenomenon of the contemporary society, namely information society, information, to the domain of information and its diffusion all over the world, across the globe. So that's what to me, Castles is doing that. Though he doesn't, acknowledge it in that sense, but of course he has Giddens referred constantly in his work. He is a Spaniard, and very interestingly, Minister of Universities of Spanish government. So a very prominent figure, like Giddens was. He's also the minister, most prominent figure globally in adopting network terminology. The whole concept of network in the macro sociological theory. He is not trying to integrate this agency and action, but rather trying to understand the nature of the working of the present day society, in terms of networks. His first book was on urban question, and then the city and the grassroots, etc. Where in his earlier days, he was a left wing thinker. He's considered as a leftist, and then influenced by particularly Althusser and so on, and known as an expert of city. And in the network society also, he has given much prominence, emphasis to cities. We will come to that. Now that the information age is a trilogy, having 3 volumes. That is trilogy that he wrote between 1996 and 1998, which is considered as the magnum opus. He's one of the best work, of Manuel Castells. It had many reprints, translated into over 20 languages. We are taking into consideration of all these elements because to understand, to locate him, in terms of his position and his prominence, importance in the in current sociological analysis and thinking. But here, one thing that we need to take note of is that in the network society, he has given umpteen number of examples, from current society, contemporary society. So it is, the book is highly empirical, and many of his reviewers, have noted this, that it is highly empirical, and of course he's focusing on the role of information. So that's what I said. The defining character of the society, of the contemporary society, is this: the importance of information, the diffusion of information through ICT as a revolution. And so that announces an information age, a new society emerged by the development of networks enabled by ICTs, information communication technologies, and priority to information flows. So that's an introduction to Castells. And so information age or information society, although he doesn't give much after that, although the title of his book is Information Age, but later he focuses mostly on network society rather than information society. Because it is how this network, how the information is passed, the praxis of information, perhaps to use that our sociological notion of praxis, the doing of information, the generation, the circulation or production, the production and circulation and diffusion of information is conducted in and through the networks. That's his emphasis. That's where he emphasizes. And so it is an intense interconnected flow of information for all kinds of activities and functions and the transformation of society, accompanied transformations, whether it be economic, social, cultural, political, religious, and whatnot. Every sphere of social life globally, every sphere of social life globally has been influenced by, is by this flow of information that is interconnected. Creation, distribution, use, integration, and manipulation of information. And information has become the key substance today, the key element today for all human activity. And therefore, so as the Foucault and others say, knowledge as power, this knowledge or information has become the really powerful form of social life today. If you have information, you are powerful. If you don't have information, not powerful. So it has come to that kind of inclusion, inclusion, the criterion for inclusion and exclusion in society today. That divides society today: information rich and information poor. So that's why information has become the key element, and his analysis is rooted fully, completely on this substance, this commodity called information. And of course, the context, that era of the ICTs, that started from after World War, World War II onwards, this advancement in this technology that is spearheaded by the idea of globalization, the philosophy and phenomenon of globalization, the technological development in electronics, which is considered as the most transforming technology event since the capture of fire. The humanity in the beginning stage, has found fire, and that's where the whole cultural living of human beings started on earth. The beginning of the fire, the capture of the fire. So they say it's after that is millions of years ago, thousands of years ago, that we have now ICT as the most transforming technology event in society. And that transformation, the revolutionary element of that transformation is that the transformation to or conversion of analog signals to digital systems. That's where that is the real crux of this revolution. The digital signals, the invention of digital signals to carry information across the globe. And that digital signal is also now can be also said as modem revolution, modulation and demodulation of these signals through modems, electronic modems. So modem revolution. And so actually this was predicted by our Canadian media patriarch, we call McLuhan, the media patriarch, who has done fantastic studies on media. Even way back in the 1960s, 1964, he has this famous book, Understanding Media. So he said in that book in 1964, our new electronic technology that extends our senses and nerves in a global embrace has large implications for the future of language. Future of language, language in every fashion, the economic language, the political language, the cultural language, not only, as a medium of communication, but language in every sphere of life, social life. So now information has become, or information technology has become not an optional substance, but a defining and compelling aspect of our living, our social life. If not for the ICTs, the very our act, the present action would not have been possible. Would not have been possible. In fact, the ICTs are now in a way the savior. During this pandemic, season of the COVID-19 season. So that means it has become the very defining feature of our present era, the present epoch. This idea of information society gained widespread currency in the 70s and 80s, and we talked about that. And so the very notion of society as information society, the postmodern society is called as information society. Some call it as, it is equated to the postmodern period, the period after modernity. And they are related to concepts such as post-industrial society, which are, a path-breaking kind of text. Post-industrial society, the idea of post-Fordism from Fordism, we'll talk about a bit more, as we proceed. Post-modern society or late modernity, in the words of Giddens, knowledge society, telematic society, and so on and so forth. So information society is also known in these terms and concepts. Now, in characterizing this information society, Castells has come up with this concept of informational capitalism. Informational capitalism to characterize our present contemporary society in terms of the notion of information. It is informational capitalism, informational capitalism. What does that mean? Informational in the sense that, in terms of networks, in terms of structuring our contacts, structuring our relationships, structuring our economy, structuring, all other aspects of our social life. We need information. So in that sense, it is informational. You used it as an adjective. And then, but that points to the aspect of change in our contemporary society, aspect of change. Whereas, in terms of the production process, all principles of the features, or what we call the spirit of capitalism, which Weber has talked about, remains the same in terms of profit seeking, private ownership, market principles, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, capitalism indicates the element of continuity of the present day society. So we have both continuity and change in this coinage, in this concept of informational capitalism. So the element of change is brought by the all pervasive, pervading substance of information, and the element of continuity is brought about by the element of capitalism. And we call it this particular era as post-capitalism. That is capitalism beyond, I mean, the next stage of the post period of capitalism. And this is being characterized as, in terms of ideologies, we call it as, he called it as industrialism. A movement from industrialism to informationalism. You can understand, you can, gather the focus on these two isms, two ideologies, namely industries and information. Industry and information. That is, in other words, we can say from machine-centric production, in metaphorically it's called wheel, representing machine, from machine-centric production to the productions through digital medium or virtual medium. So from wheel to ICT or wheel to digital, that's the transformation. That is the, the movement or shift. Or from goods or commodities having exchange value. The information also is treated as a commodity, but like material goods, the production of massive, huge quantities of goods or objects, to now mostly it is diffused as services through knowledge and information, passing of knowledge and information, circulation, distribution, production and distribution of knowledge and information. And then we see that, in the previous society, in the earlier society, it was the economic divide, particularly we remember Marx here, and now we have the digital divide, the information rich and the information not rich, poorly informed or having this facility, access to information. It's also, can be treated as Fordism, representing the industrial society. Fordism, that, the pioneering capitalist, or the founder and owner of the Ford company, the motor company, who came up with this idea of scientific management in order to increase the production, more scientifically, in order to get the maximum out of the laborers, that he has conceived a line of assembly line, etc., and stipulating or giving them exact and precise work, etc. So that is scientific management, the Fordism of industrial period, and to post-Fordism. Post-Fordism represents the aspects of flexibility and innovation, that they're ready to change, configure. If something happens, we have another option, and there is no the space or time has no importance, no significance to it. You can move, you can talk to from anywhere, or give our service, working from home. So the physical space is unimportant, insignificant, and people who are part of this information domain, information world, has to be very flexible and innovative, creative, very innovative. So flexibility and innovation are the buzzwords of the post-Fordist period, namely the period of informationalism. In that sense, we can talk about a movement from the spirit of capitalism, that Weber talks about. You remember the main the spirit, what constituted the spirit of capitalism, that inspired, that made the Calvinists, the capitalists of the Calvinist religion, to undertake, capitalist engagements and give birth to sort of very, very, very skyrocketing kind of capitalism, versus spirit of informationalism with flexibility, with innovation, adaptability, and scalability, etc., survivability, and so on and so forth, of post-Fordism period. So, that resembling Weberian spirit of capitalism, and we can talk about in the Castell's idea, the spirit of informationalism, that reigns supreme now. Spirit of informationalism is very powerful and dominant now, characterized by information generation, information processing and transmission that have become the fundamental sources of productivity and power. At the same time, what we need to note is that industrialism does not disappear completely, but only what happens is it loses its centrality, and in its place, information is situated. So industrials are there. We have industries, we have production. For example, all question of the motor companies. They are producing cars and marketing it much more than the period of Fordist period. These are there, factories are there, mass productions are there, but then the centrality goes to information. Information subsumes and transforms industrial technology. So it's the question of the transfer of technologies, the shift of technology in terms of its centrality, from machine-centric and labor intense to based or information intense. So that is the shift, from labor intensive, from machine-centric, machine in the sense of the wheel, and which are physically or locally located in a particular given space, to spaceless, the virtual world, where ICT centric and information intense. So that is the change. For example, automobiles, an industrial artifact, will undergo an informational transformation as an assemblage of computers and data. You see, now we have everything done is computerized, acceleration, braking, steering, and whatnot. The whole production of assemblage of these automobiles, cars and other vehicles is done through computations. This using electronics. Electronically, they are all fixed and all. The whole operations are made electronically, and we are the benefactors of that. And major features of informationalism or properties of information, like Giddens says, rules, and resources as properties of structure. Here we have these two mainly: space of flaws, not a physical space, not a place in the sense of materiality, physical, but rather it flows through a space we call virtual. But this physical proximity is made through networks. That is the difference. So there is the physical location, the space is not important. In that sense, it is spaceless, without any given physical space, but rather it runs through any space in global, globally, worldwide, but through this medium of networks. That's where Castell's distinctive contribution comes in. That understanding of networks as a medium, as a channel of the information flows. So he distinguishes between space of place, regions, the locale in the Giddens terminology, the space of place and the space of flows. Distinguishes between the two in order to distinguish between the physical space and the virtual space. The flow happens through virtual space, with the help of ICT, the digital medium, the digital signals, through digital signals. Space of places become immaterial. So in that sense, we experience a geographical discontinuity. It does not matter in which geography, which region, which country, which nation, we are located. What matters is whether we have access to ICTs in order to make this space of flows discontinued. to ensure the discontinuity of digital flows, information flows. And in that sense, he says cities have become very central, very centric. We know that. It's also part of the digital divide. Where, in most of these companies, information-related companies, the so-called the computer in this wider network. And so mega cities, for example, like Bangalore or in Andhra, the capital of Andhra, or Bombay, or Japan, or New York now, but New York, you understand. Such mega cities have become development engines, because it is in those areas where these are being engineered and manipulated, that and that furthers development, any kinds of development. So cities have gained much more prominence and center. Even earlier it was like that, the division between the cities and the rural areas and so on, the villages, at once globally connected and locally disconnected. That is the irony, in essence, that cities, when they become development engines, having a central stage, in the in development, in the process of development, but at the same time they are locally disconnected, rather, and instead they have global connection. That's a paradox, in fact. Globally connected and locally disconnected. Globally disconnected both physically and socially. We know that, we have these techno guys, the so-called techno workers. They don't have much connection, with the people, local people or local environment, regions and so on. They remain as a class set apart, like the techies. They are the techies, and they engineer the so-called development, but they are perhaps located, located in cities, in urban centers. So that is, in a way, a paradox, an irony of this informationalism. The other property is timeless time. Timeless time, where technology manipulates the natural sequence of events. The question of virtuality. Again, the natural sequence is disrupted, is discontinued. So it is that time does not matter. Time and space does not matter for the information flows, for the continuity of spatial information flows. So real virtuality based on a hypertext reality, and the virtual world becomes a real world. In terms of the movement of information, as well as the kind of representations, the digital representations, the digital, the world that is created in this virtual world becomes a real reality, real.
Dear participants, please be in the line. Soon, resource person will be back because he is facing little issue, technical issue. Okay, please bear with us.
Dear participant, you can post your questions with regard to Anthony Giddens' lecture so that the time will be saved. Possible, post your question, the clarification in regard to the earlier session so that we can save our time. So this gap you can do the job.
Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Hello, Professor Sampath? Oh,
Yes, sir, we
yeah,
are
because
here.
in between we can't hear me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think I'll go first. I lost electricity here. I was using the
No issue.
of information.
No issues. No issues.
I was using university network,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden it dropped. Yeah, that's why this
No issue.
disruption.
Yes,
Sorry
sir.
about that. I will go fast and finish it.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Is the slides visible?
No, sir, you have to present again, sir.
Slides?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. I'll do that. Give me a minute to do that.
No issue, sir.
Okay, let me do that because I lost the connectivity. I'm
Yes.
sorry about that.
Right.
Present now. Okay, so I think it's all clear. And now this idea of networks actually is not a physical thing. It's not. There are a number of other authors, have used this concept of network, but he has taken up this concept and used it very comprehensively. Actually characteristic of this information age. That's what is the distinction is. So network society is like is with interconnected nodes, points of interaction. For example, we have a part here, in the Kerala University Department of Sociology and located there, Bharathiar University and places. Major points are between two of us. Exchange characters and so on. We have this global interface and micro interface and so on. But the major characteristics features are, as I mentioned earlier, flexibility, scalability, flexibility. Flexibility I have explained. Scalability means we can expand or shrink in size with little disruption. So we can, that, it can have different scales, and we can adjust those scales, adapt those scales, expand or shrink. The survivability means there is no epicenter. There is no one controlling center as such. Can operate in a wide range of configurations. Okay, so those are the major property. Features of network society. Now, if you look at some shifts, some changes that have occurred because of this pervasive network.
Sir, this is This is Sampath Kumar, sir. So we can't hear you, sir, clearly. That audio is it's breaking, sir. Your voice. I think the strength of network is an issue. I think. Yeah, dear participants, you heard, no? I spoke to sir, resource person. He'll be back. Please wait. Hello. Yeah.
Sir.
I think.
Dear participants, you can post your questions for both the thinkers. Even the discussion may not come, and we will answer your questions at the end of the session. So please, post your question as quick as possible.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Attention, please, dear participants. This is a technical error in the networking. I mean, the Manuel Castell's theory is not proving sometime. The time and space is not seriously working out because of network problem. And we have posted the feedback form in our chat box. The end of the session, those who have attended 4 sessions continuously, they can fill up the feedback form, send to us immediately, so that within a week we'll send the certificate to your email address. So kindly fill up your feedback form, please. Thank you. Hello, என்ன சாச்சி? ஐயோ, இன்னொரு ஃபோன் இல்லையே சார்? இன்னொன்று இல்லையே சார்? இன்னொரு
Yeah, dear participants, this is Sambat Kumar from Department of Sociology and Population Studies, Bharathiar University, and really thankful to all of you because you are so patient in listening, and you all were very quiet, right? And so disciplined participants. Okay, because I attended many webinars. Okay, many people, they just switch on their audio and video. Okay, it will be, continuously were disturbing the presenters. I think you all were wonderful, really. Thanks to you all for your presence and active participation. You can, those who have any doubts or clarifications, questions, yeah, you can type in the dialog box or chat box. And you might have seen in the chat box, we have gave a Google form for your valuable feedback about all 4 sessions. Okay, started from Monday. Dr. Ratish Kumar from JMU, he gave a session, and next day, Tuesday, we had Dr. Nagaraj Bundamedu. He spoke about 2 authors. Okay, and third session happened yesterday, 18th. Okay, there when Dr. Saktivel Raju spoke about two important contributions of 2 important authors. And today we had Dr. Antony Palackal sir. So we together, gave you the forms, Google Forms. So I request all of you to fill the form and submit. And next week onwards, next week we have planned one more webinar series 2 on recent developments in social science research. And because even during the lockdown period, there were lots of webinars were organized by many institutions and organizations, very specifically to the research methodology. But this particular webinar, what we have planned is a bit different from other webinars on research methodology. We are planning to focus on 4 major recent developments. Okay, starting from mixed methods research, okay, and application of theory in research, and how to bring that theoretical perspectives in the discussion part of your doctoral thesis. And the third one, we have planned like interdisciplinary research, And last one is about scale development, measurement, and publication of scales. Okay, these four are not much deliberated by other organizations and institutions. So that is why we have planned this for areas for the next week's session. The webinar 2, series 2, starts from 22nd to 25th. It continues 4 days. Okay, so we request your participation in that webinar also. And I think the resource person still facing an issue with the network. Okay, give us a few more minutes to we try to connect him. Okay, we'll update you in 5 minutes time. And once again, you all were wonderful participants for us. And the success of webinar mostly lies the way the participants participate. I think in that way, once again, thanks to you for your for patient listening. And please bear with us for another 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Hello, hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Yes, yes. Am I connected now?
Yes,
Is
sir,
it
you are
okay?
Yeah,
connected.
Am I?
you're connected. You're
I'm
connected.
audio. I'm extremely sorry. I didn't
No
know
issue.
that I lost connection second time. So
Yes,
I was going on and then concluded.
yes,
Later only I really, because I could see only my presentation. No, I didn't know
yes,
that.
yes.
Okay. Now should I? But what do we do now?
You can conclude, sir, and
So I have
can take
concluded
questions.
saying that, so we
Yes,
have lots of radical changes in the field of economy, in terms of communication, in terms of culture, in terms of politics. All have been radically shifted radically, and they have taken different forms, different kinds of modalities, and so on, because of this network society. And so that's what he says. And but at the same time, as a critique, in terms of looking at some of his limitations, I was thinking that he was glorifying, information and information society, the network, excessively. I thought, reducing everything to everything, the causality to information society and ICT. We have many areas. I mean, particularly because of the divide, the digital divide. Many areas and sections, categories of people living in the absence of this information technology, but then he has a kind of deterministic approach, understanding about this information technology. Also, he seems to ignore the power that might be operating still, in corporations, in politics, and so on, and its effects on society. He seems to ignore that, and also because you see, even now we had this problem, technological problem, and then therefore we got disconnected. But Castell seems to celebrate technology and its success completely. So these are some of the issues in his work, but at the same time, it's a great work, and he is even compared to our great classical sociologists like Weber, Durkheim, Marx, and so on, in his analysis of the contemporary society. So I think I should stop here now. Those who want, I can send you the slides. So now to questions.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, sir, for your session. Because always everyone face the technical issues, sir.
Yes.
We didn't lose much time. Yeah.
Correct.
Now
Okay.
I'll hand over the mic to Suresh Babu, sir,
Okay.
for the
Okay.
queries. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Fine. Fine.
So here are some questions, sir. A few questions raised by participants.
Okay.
2 or 3 questions I'll ask you, sir.
All right.
What is the role of socialization in regard to Giddens' theory of structuration?
Role of sociologists.
Yes, sir. What is the role of socialization in regard
Okay.
to Giddens' theory of structuration?
Okay, fine. Yes, socialization.
Yes,
Shall
sir,
I
yes,
respond now?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Of course, I think I spoke about that. You see, these rules, rules are the heart of structure. It is in and through the enactment of rules that structure is possible. So rules are very important, in the process of structuration. And how do we get these rules? How do individuals acquire these rules? Rules means the norms, the values, prevailing in a particular society. The kind of procedures that are stipulated, directed by a society in specific context, in given context. But how does individual gather this, assimilate this? It is in and through socialization only. So socialization is very important. It is through socialization that members of a given community, given society, acquire these rules, and then make use of those rules appropriately for their practices, for their interactions. Okay, so socialization is very important as far as guidance is concerned. Okay, the next question, I suppose it is clear.
The next question is raised by Kavita Manohar. How the concept of routinization and regionalization is related according to Giddens?
Okay, routinization and regionalization.
Yeah,
See, as I told you, the two components are actors and their agency on the one side, structures in the form of rules and resources on the other side. Now, actors make use of these rules and resources to engage, in social life. That is for actions and interactions, and thereby create social systems and institutions. Is it clear? And
yes, sir.
in that process, uh, by repeating and creating a pattern of interaction in a given situation, there are these rules and resources. They institutionalize. They are institutionalized through this use of rules and resources in a pattern form. They are repeated again and again. That's why it's being routinized. So we know in a family context, how the relationship between parents and children, between husband and wife, father and mother, or parents and between siblings, etc., are to be followed in normal situation. They follow that because they are internalized, those rules and regulations, and they make use of the resources, and then we get certain forms of patterns of practices, whether it be in a classroom, whether it be political situations, political arenas, in institutions, wherever we go and interact with people, we routinize this thing. Routinization. This is what phenomenologists talk about. Routinization and institutionalization of our practices. That's what Giddens also says. That we routinize, and these our interactions are regionalized. They are specific to certain regions, specific to certain locales, that is physical space. So it is not exactly the same as, we Indians greet each other, maybe through folding our hands and say namaste, whereas Westerners normally they shake their hands, but some people in Indian context may not appreciate people shaking hands or embracing, hugging. But whereas Westerners normally they hug or shake hands and so on. I'm just saying an example, citing an example. So this is how we have certain patterns that are routinized, they are regionalized and institutionalized, and we create systems through such institutionalizations, such routinizations and regionalizations. So our educational system, our classrooms, our departments are functioning in a particular way, in India. And perhaps there are maybe slight changes in from state to state, but there is radical change between Indian educational or Indian classrooms and Western classrooms. The relation between teachers and students. These are all pattern. These are all because these differences happen because there are differences in the patterns that are formed using rules and procedures appropriate to those particular regions and locales, thereby institutionalizing, routinizing certain ways of interaction. They are called institutions and systems. The family, the marriage, the caste, relations, caste interactions, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Thank you, sir. One more question, sir. Does Manuel Castells promote technological determinism through his works on network society and information age?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's where I concluded, but I did not explain it. To me, he falls in this pit of determinism. Like we talk about Marx. In terms of economic determinism, Castells also seem to locate everything that happens in contemporary society to information society, reducing everything to information society, information age, and this information flows. But we know that in the present day society, there are several things, as I mentioned, that are continuous from the earlier forms of society, in terms of party politics, in terms of class conflicts, in terms of other struggles, the people, the issues of the issues of those who are outside of the purview of information society. We have several categories. For example, I don't know, in other places in the state of Kerala, we had even one tribal girl, committing suicide because she did not have access to a computer or technology, when we started this online classes. It means there are several groups, several people in our country, in society, who are outside of the purview of or domain of this information technology. How do we talk about them? But Castell seems to be simply, obsessed with this notion of information society, and everything in contemporary society is being determined and shaped, conditioned by information technology and information flows. So there we find this pitfall of falling in the trap of determinism, that is information age determinism. We may call in that way.
Sir,
Okay.
sir, last questions. It is kind of statement. I read it out what the participant has written. Written by Arshavardhan Vignesh. What research methodology can one adapt to prove social practices as oppressive, so that the participants do not act in compliance with an oppressive structure? I pose this question with the practice of ragging in mind. Here, the participant involved.
Ragging.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Ragging.
Okay.
I pose this question with the practice of ragging in mind. Here, the participant involves seniors and juniors, the oppressed and oppressed. But when the juniors become senior, they themselves become oppressors. How does one disrupt this oppressive cycle using the help of the theory? Could you please suggest
using the help of this theory?
Could you please suggest some books for the same? And one same person, could you kindly suggest some books for the studying internet societies? Two questions.
Studying internet societies.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Okay. Now, this is my first comment is that this is a different issue altogether. Making a research on ragging, and why this ragging is being perpetuated by students from one batch to the other. It has, I don't know, whether it has anything to do with information and network society and so on. The social media is used as a medium platform for ragging and so on. That is true. When more than that, the ragging, physical ragging, that happens, that takes place in an institutional context, is not, in fact, directly related to this question or area of information society. However, but I would say, research methodology, we have several methods to study this question. I would recommend a qualitative study in this case. What are the how does students internalize in the second year, when they become second year? In the first year, all of them resist ragging. But when these students become second year, they become the perpetrators. The victims becomes the perpetrators. Victims become the perpetrators. The culprits. So that transition, that internalization of this process of enjoying, inflicting violence and cruelties on the junior students, and for whatever justifications, will have to be explored. Understanding their meanings and how they gather their motives and meanings and values with regard to this particular behavior. So I right now I have only that to suggest. Use our typical qualitative methods and understand their that we call it as the interpretative, the subjective mode of understanding, and then try to gather their the subtle understandings about ragging, and that this transformation of victims to culprits, victims to perpetrators, and that is to be explored differently. I think it has no direct connection with the topic that we are discussing today, and there are any number of books to read on this, even Castell's to begin with. Then we have Daniel Bell, Wellman. Barry Wellman is another good author. Barry Wellman, and even Giddens have talked about modernity and issues of modernity, etc., in the context of this arrival. But before all that, I would recommend that you read McLuhan, and then read Information Age, or this Daniel Bell, and so on, or as I told you, Barry Wellman, or Dijik. There is another author, Dijik, Dijik, and so on. So these are some of the authors to read about this information society and internet and so on. The sociological dimension, not the technological aspects. Technological, you have engineering books. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. And a lot many questions are there, and that will be sent to your email, sir, if participants want to ask. Sir, okay. I just wanted to say a few words that where were you, sir, these many days?
Excuse me, I didn't hear you. What is it?
Where were you, sir, these many days? I will lose you, sir, really.
Oh.
And there are sociologists, but revolutionary sociologists are very few, sir. And
I am.
Anyway, speaking, sociologists, they study and they teach and they go. But this is a sociologist where he writes and contributes to the society and nation building, and collaborating the international background and making us a stand before the world. So really, I would appreciate you. And not only this small, 1.5 hour session is not difficult to prove that what you are. And we'll have to call you, sir, to our place, and we'll arrange our programs. Then formal vote of thanks, and Sambat sir will tell you. And on behalf of myself and Department of Sociology, I thank you very much, sir, for excellent speech pertaining to the two important thinkers of modern era. Sir, I'll hand the mic to Dr. Sambat Kumar to deliver.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
sir.
very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Suresh Babu, sir, for conducting the question hour. And once again, good afternoon to all. I think we have come to the end of webinar series 1 on insights into contemporary sociological thoughts. I think I have a whole lot of people to thank. First of all, I thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Kaliraj, and respected Registrar, Dr. Murugan, for gave us a platform to conduct this webinar. And most importantly, today's resource person, Dr. Antony Palackal, sir, who dealt with two important theorists of our discipline, Manuel Castells and Antony Giddens, and spoke about network societies and structuration theory. So really, so informative, and I think it's a really eye-openers for all of us. And even many participants, they even appreciated, saying that your session will help them for their preparation of NET and JRF examination. So in a simple language, even you reached everyone, sir, with your ideas. So thank you so much, sir, for your presence and your contribution, and a wonderful session. On behalf of Department of Sociology and Population Studies, Bharathiar University, and all my participants and scholars, students, we wholeheartedly thank you, sir, for your presence and for your sessions. Wonderful session. And I thank Dr. Suresh Babu, sir, always supporting to me for any welfare of the department. And we actually long back we discussed about conducting a seminar or a conference specifically related to sociological theories. But due to this, all this corona and pandemic, and we could not, make it real. But somehow, through this platform, we could able to reach many people, and with the support of wonderful resource persons. So thanks to you, sir, for your support. And I thank Dr. Prabhu, who's far away from the Coimbatore, and from there technically supporting us Okay, so we are peacefully sitting and talking like this, but he is behind us and supporting, taking care of all technical things. Thanks, Dr. Prabhu. And I thank Mr. Vivek, Assistant Professor, Sri Ramakrishna College of Arts and Science, Coimbatore. He also supported us with invitations and other support. So I thank all support staffs of Department of Sociology, Bharathiar University, and most importantly, all my participants were very patiently waiting, and they were very very quiet and very disciplined participants. So thank you so much to all the participants for your support, continuous support. I already said that we have planned one more webinar from next Monday on recent developments and research methods. I request all of your continuous support in that webinar also. So once again, I'll thank Dr. Antony Palackal, sir. So when I met you in the Vimala College at Thrissur, then I came and discussed with Suresh Babu, sir, that sir. Yeah, Sar spoke really well a day. So we actually had in mind to invite you offline, but somehow it happened through online, sir. So we are all, as already Suresh Babu sir said, we would like to have you offline. So we'll invite you, sir, to our department for a seminar. Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for your presence, and thank you all for your listening. Okay. Thanks. Thank you.